Hey guys, Zane here with another One Take review, and today I wanted to talk about This Is a Photograph by Kevin Morby. This Is a Photograph is the latest album from singer-slash-songwriter and I guess kind of sort of rock revivalist Kevin Morby, whose sort of influence from artists like Lou Reed or even to some extent Bob Dylan has definitely injected a new life in that sort of laid-back, sarcastic, witty, lackadaisical, very lyrical sort of subgenre of rock music that really hasn't been super active since the maybe late 70s, early 80s maybe. I mean, like any genre or style of music, it's not like it's gone anywhere, but Kevin Morby is definitely putting new life into it. This Is a Photograph is another example of just why he's so great at doing what he does. Now, first things first, Morby's vocal work is not impressive in the slightest, but I beg you this question. Did you expect it to be, really? I mean, when you really boil this record down to its core, it is a singer-songwriter kind of album, and as such, the lyrical content should be the main focus and not so much the vocal work. And, I mean, it's not like the vocals do anything wrong or anything like that. Morby takes a very normal, average, done 100 times before kind of laid back, I don't really care about being here, maybe a little bit sarcastic kind of vocal style that a lot of singer-songwriters have done in the past, and, well, frankly, Kevin Morby just doesn't do anything unique in that regard. In fact, if you want to date this vocal style back to the 70s and 80s, you could even say that thousands of bands have done vocal styles similar to what Kevin Morby's doing here, if not the exact same, whether it's the previously mentioned Lou Reed, or alternative rock bands like Sonic Youth, or sort of alternative pop maybe kind of bands like Pavement. No matter which direction you look in, the alternative scene of music has always had vocalists doing exactly what Kevin Morby is doing on This Is a Photograph, and frankly, the record just isn't very impressive in that regard. Morby shines, obviously, much more as a songwriter and lyricist, which is kind of what you're supposed to listen to the album for anyway, so as long as you don't go into This As a Photograph expecting this very eloquent, beautiful wording in the lyricism or beautiful paintings of imagery, you'll probably enjoy this. I personally think that Morby is an excellent vocalist with a very simple and blunt but powerful way of putting his thoughts and ideas into his music. Kevin Morby is direct, and when he wants you to feel something, he makes sure that you know that he wants you to feel that. He doesn't dance around certain ideas in exchange for just making an atmosphere that feels like that. If he wants you to feel sad, you will feel sad based off of these lyrics. If he wants to create something nostalgic, he will outright describe the feeling of nostalgia in his music. There's no over-the-top metaphors or unnecessary depictions of things that may represent something when in reality they don't. And even the greatest songwriters really fall to that sometimes. Even my favorite songwriter of all time, Leonard Cohen, still kind of did that sometimes, just over-the-top imagery that was frankly unnecessary. But impressively, Kevin Morby kind of manages to dodge that for the most part. That's not to say that Morby hasn't done great songwriting in the past. Obviously, he has done very strong lyrical work on his previous records. That being said, This Is a Photograph definitely shows that he still has it several albums into his career. There are also some noticeable psychedelic touches on This Is a Photograph, which is interesting, in my opinion, but unfortunately it's just not developed enough for my personal liking. Whether it's embracing a sort of psychedelic folk or if it's fully going psychedelic rock, there really isn't any time where This Is a Photograph truly embraces psychedelia as a sound, and I just personally think that this would have been a much more interesting album if it had gone in that sort of direction instead. Not to say that This Is a Photograph is boring, it's not. It's certainly an engaging album thanks to Kevin Morby's excellent lyricism and undeniable personality, even with his lack of vocal skills, but I just truly do feel like there could have been more done here in terms of actual psychedelic sounds and experimentation. Kevin Morby obviously comes from a genre background that is both famous and notorious for over-the-top experimentation. Not to compare an artist to another 3 times in a row now, but if you look at Lou Reed, you can see sounds that were very experimental, whether it be with the Velvet Underground, or the glam rock of Transformer, or the biting political topicalness of an album like New York for the time period anyway. But then again, Lou Reed also did Metal Machine music, and then songs like I Wish I Were Black and things like that. You know, you kind of get where I'm coming from here. There's a history of questionable experimentation, both musically and lyrically within the realm of this particular style of singer-songwriter music, and Kevin Morby doesn't really embrace it all that much, which is unfortunate because the handful of psychedelic flourishes that he does introduce here are extremely interesting, and I kind of hope that he does find an album that goes less Kevin Morby and maybe more Kevin Morby becomes the second member of Tame Impala, maybe? Perhaps I'm asking for a bit too much in that regard, but in all seriousness, Kevin Morby really could have done more on This Is a Photograph, but nonetheless, it's still a very strong album, even if it does truly lack a lot of experimentation that I was hoping for from the record. So overall, This Is a Photograph has some strong lyricism, some pretty decent instrumentals, and mainly is carried by the aforementioned lyricism and Morby's personality, because God knows his vocals are not carrying this album. That being said, there certainly could have been more done here, generally speaking, but I think it's an extremely consistent album overall that really has no right for me to really bash on it that much in terms of actual creative experimentation. This is a straightforward record that understands what it is and knows what it wants to do, and it does that, and it's simple in that regard. I don't think there's really any need to overanalyze it in that way, and because of that, I'm going to give This Is a Photograph 4 stars out of 5, and with that being said, that's the end of this review, and I'll see you guys in the next one.